Hello, and welcome to Short Stories, a production of the National Taichung University of Science and Technology Language Center. Today's story is based on Shakespeare's Scottish play, Macbeth. It was first published in 1623 and is one of Shakespeare's most famous and shortest tragedies. It's a sad tale about the corrupting power of excessive political ambition. This play has been the center of much speculation and rumor. Some in the theater industry believe it to be cursed due to the numerous accidents associated with it. In 1947, an actor was stabbed in the final scene. In 1970, the actor playing Macbeth had a heart attack on stage. And more recently, actor Alec Baldwin injured another actor during production of this play. Does this play bring bad luck? I'll let you decide. Vocabulary: doom, doom. The devil often tells half-truths in order to guide us to our doom. Bring something to fruition. Bring something to fruition. I will help you bring this prophecy to fruition. What goes around comes around. What goes around comes around. You shouldn't tell lies because what goes around comes around. Regicide. Regicide. The House of Commons committed regicide when it executed King Charles I in 1649. Deceitful, deceitful. The king's deceitful son still lives and is spreading horrible rumors about me. Assassin, assassin. Macbeth hired 2 assassins to kill Banquo. Off one's rocker, off one's rocker. I think the king is off his rocker. C-section, C-section. Due to health concerns, the doctor performed a C-section to deliver the baby. And now the story. Late one stormy afternoon, a Scottish general named Macbeth and his colleague were marching through the windy highlands on their way to meet King Duncan. "Odd weather we're having today, Banquo," commented Macbeth. Banquo stopped suddenly and pointed at 3 women dancing on the heath in front of them. "What are those weirdos doing?" he said. The 2 generals walked forward to get a closer look. What they saw were 3 hideous hags, each uglier than the one before. They had bony fingers, sagging flesh, and hairy moles on their faces. "I think that one has a mustache," whispered Banquo to his friend. Suddenly, the first witch spoke. She said, "All hail Macbeth, Thane of Glamis." Then the second witch spoke. "All hail Macbeth, Thane of Cawdor." Then the third witch spoke. "All hail Macbeth, who shall be king." Macbeth was stunned and intrigued. After a moment of silence, he asked the witches, "You know I am Thane of Glamis." "That is correct. But why do you call me Thane of Cawdor? And why do you say that I shall be king? Duncan is king, and his son is the heir." But the weird sisters did not reply. Instead, they turned their attention to Banquo. The first witch said, "Hail Banquo, the lesser of Macbeth, and his greater." "Less happy and yet happier," added the second witch. "You shall sire many kings, though you will not be one," said the third witch. "What are you talking about? Speak plainly," demanded Macbeth. But the 3 witches vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving Macbeth and Banquo alone to ponder their words. Just then, the 2 generals were greeted by a captain named Ross. "There you are, General," greeted Captain Ross. "I've been looking all over for you. King Duncan wishes to congratulate you on your victory over the invaders. As a reward, he has made you Thane of Cawdor." Macbeth and Banquo were too stunned to speak. Ross handed Macbeth the official document granting him his new title. "The prophecy is true," muttered Macbeth as he read the letter. He turned to Banquo and asked, "How do you feel about your prophecy, buddy?" Banquo was not as excited as Macbeth. "The devil often tells half-truths in order to guide us to our doom," he said. Macbeth shrugged and immediately started imagining what he'd do when he became king. After receiving the news from Ross, Macbeth and Banquo proceeded to meet King Duncan at his castle. After many manly pats on the back and cups of ale, Macbeth invited the king to his castle for a special meal. The king, of course, graciously accepted this invitation, and the date was set. Upon returning home, Macbeth was greeted by his loyal wife. "You're home early, dear," she said. "You usually work late when there's a war." "Honey," exclaimed Macbeth, "I have great news." He proceeded to tell his wife everything that had transpired. As she listened, she nodded and took sips of her whiskey. "This is very good news," she finally said. "I will help you bring this prophecy to fruition." Macbeth scratched his beard and said, "I don't see how I can become king if Duncan is still sitting on the throne." Lady Macbeth smiled wickedly and said, "Just leave it to me, sweetie." The day of the royal dinner party arrived. Macbeth was anxiously pacing back and forth in his room. What to do, what to do, he muttered to himself. "The only way for me to become king is to kill Duncan, but do I really want to do that?" He decided to weigh the pros and cons using a chalkboard. In the pros column, he wrote crown and fancy clothes and money. In the cons column, he wrote Duncan is my friend, and blood is messy, and what goes around comes around. After nervously pulling on his beard for several minutes, Macbeth finally threw down the chalk and declared, "I won't do it." Just then Lady Macbeth entered the room. "Sweetie," she said, "King Duncan has arrived and is waiting for you." She took a look at the chalkboard and realized what Macbeth was thinking. "Don't tell me you're getting cold feet," she moaned. "Duncan is my friend," replied Macbeth, "and as the man of this house I am putting my foot down. We are not going to commit regicide." Lady Macbeth's eyes flared with rage. She grabbed her husband's cloak, pulled him close, and said, "Listen here, coward. You have a chance to become king of this soggy country, so man up and do what you need to do." But, stuttered Macbeth, "how will I get the other thanes to accept me as king if I murder Duncan when he is a guest in my home?" Lady Macbeth released her husband and said, "I've got that covered." She then told him her plan to frame Duncan's own bodyguards for murder. "Oh," said the astonished Macbeth, "that might work." That night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Macbeth sneaked into King Duncan's room, armed with a dagger. As he crept closer, the gloom of the night made him feel uneasy. He imagined images of blood and knives. He stopped dead in his tracks when he heard the king's bodyguards say their prayers before going to sleep. "It's fortunate for me that the king has such lousy bodyguards," he thought. Finally, Macbeth did the terrible deed and ran back to his bedroom, where he was greeted by his wife. "Did you do it?" she asked eagerly. "It was so scary, honey, I almost didn't go through with it." Lady Macbeth pulled her husband close and said, "There, there," as she patted him on the head. "Did you remember to leave the knives next to the bodyguards?" she then asked. Macbeth's silence told her the answer. "You forgot to leave the knives?" she yelled, pushing him away. "Shh! You'll wake the whole castle," whispered Macbeth. Lady Macbeth grabbed the blood-stained knives from her husband and marched out of the room. "If you want something done right," she muttered, "you had better do it yourself." Alone in the room, Macbeth looked down at his blood-stained hands and said, "Can all of Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hands?" The following morning, news of the king's gruesome murder spread. There was much chaos and consternation among the other thanes. "The horror! The horror!" lamented Thane Macduff. The king's son, Malcolm, decided that it would be a good time to get out of town, or he'd be the next victim. Lady Macbeth, who was as good at acting as she was at planning murders, fainted in front of the royal court. "Someone help her, the poor thing," said Ross. Banquo remained silent. He couldn't help but feel a bit suspicious. The next day, Macbeth held an emergency meeting of the thanes. At the meeting, Macbeth raised the question, "Who shall be king?" As planned by Lady Macbeth, the thanes took a vote and declared Macbeth the new king. The prophecy had come true. A week later, Macbeth was officially crowned on the Stone of Scone. After the ceremony, he met with his close friend Banquo. Banquo greeted the king and queen with the proper manners. "How could we forget our dearest guest?" said Queen Macbeth, her face beaming. "I hope you'll join us for supper," said King Macbeth. "I plan to go riding this afternoon, but I'll be back in time," replied Banquo. "Good," stated Macbeth, "because we have much to discuss tonight. As you know, the king's deceitful son still lives and is spreading horrible rumors about me. Something must be done." Banquo nodded and replied, "Of course, my lord." He then bowed and took his leave. After Banquo left, Macbeth couldn't help but feel suspicious. "He's the only one who knows about the prophecy," he thought, "and his children are clearly destined to overthrow me. Something must be done." Later that afternoon, King Macbeth held a secret meeting with 2 assassins. "Both of you are enemies of Banquo," began the king. "I am his enemy too. I will pay you handsomely to kill him and his son. Now go." The 2 assassins returned a few hours later to announce the results of their efforts. "Banquo's throat is cut," said the first assassin. "Excellent," exclaimed Macbeth. "What about his son?" The 2 assassins looked at each other nervously before the second assassin said, "He escaped, my lord." Upon hearing this news, Macbeth was overcome with a fit of emotion. He was simultaneously happy and enraged, pleased and guilty, relieved and afraid. Just then, Queen Macbeth entered the room. "Leave," urged the king to the assassins. "We'll discuss this again in the morning." The queen approached and asked, "Who were those 2?" Macbeth tried to play it cool and replied, "Just some old poker buddies of mine. What's for dinner?" The harder that Macbeth tried to act nonchalant, the more disturbed he became. As he was sitting down at the dinner table with the other noble guests, he had a terrifying vision. He saw Banquo's ghost sitting in his chair. "Ah!" exclaimed the king as he jumped into the air in fright. "What's wrong with the king?" asked Ross. "He looks like he's seen a ghost." The queen laughed nervously and said, "Oh, don't mind him. He gets like that when he's excited." But as she helped her husband to his seat, she whispered in his ear, "Act like a man and sit quietly." Macbeth, temporarily recovering himself, raised his cup to give a speech. "A toast to you, dear thanes, for supporting me. I promise that I will serve you as a good and brave king, no matter what beast or man threatens this kingdom. I will not desert you in your hour." But the king never finished his speech. He stopped mid-sentence as he stared at the chair across from him. "It can't be," groaned the king. "Banquo, you're dead." The queen tried to cover up her husband's fit of madness by saying, "Oh, sweetie, you're such a jokester. Now be serious and let's get on with a meal." But Macbeth could not stop staring at the empty chair. "What is he looking at?" asked Ross. "I think the king is off his rocker," muttered Macduff. "All right," yelled the queen, standing up. "Everybody out." Confused and insulted, the guests quietly slipped out of the dining room, leaving the king and queen alone. "Blood will have blood," murmured Macbeth to his wife. She asked him what was wrong, and he replied, "I must go see the witches again tomorrow. I must know who is plotting against me." Concerned, the queen tried to calm her husband. "I'm neck deep in blood, honey," said Macbeth. "There's no going back now." The next night Macbeth visited the three witches in their cave. As he approached, he saw them dancing around a boiling cauldron, singing, "Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble." Macbeth stepped closer and commanded the witches to listen and answer his questions. "Who is my enemy?" he demanded. The witches threw some eye of newt into the pot, and a floating head appeared in the vapors above. "Beware Macduff," cried the ghostly head. "How shall I proceed?" inquired the king. The witches threw in some frog toes, and the head said, "Be bloody, bold, and resolute, Macbeth. No man born shall harm you." Macbeth smiled and thanked the witches for the service. Over the next few months, the tyrant Macbeth silenced his enemies and prepared for war with England. Macduff and a few other thanes made it south to England, but poor Lady Macduff and her son were murdered. When Macduff heard about the killing of his family, he ripped his clothes and shouted, "That cursed tyrant Macbeth shall meet his maker by my hands." All the rebel thanes gathered together with Duncan's son to plan an attack on Macbeth. Meanwhile, Macbeth was hastily preparing for an assault. He fortified his castle and mustered all of his soldiers. One day, while going over the battle plans, the court doctor approached him and said, "I'm sorry to inform you, my lord, that your wife has died of madness." Macbeth was silent for a minute before he said, "Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Suddenly a messenger arrived and announced that the scouts had detected movement in the forest. "It looks like the whole wood is moving, my lord," asserted the messenger. "Prepare for battle," yelled Macbeth. During the battle, Macbeth fought fiercely, muttering, "No man born can harm me." On the other side of the battlefield, Macduff fought his way through the ranks of enemy soldiers. "Face me, Macbeth, so that I can avenge my wife and child," bellowed Macduff. Finally, the two warriors faced each other. They fought furiously, but neither managed to get the upper hand. "Give up!" shouted Macbeth. "You cannot kill me. No man born can harm me." Macduff looked him straight in the eyes and replied, "My mother had a C-section." He then charged at the tyrant with all of his remaining strength and drove his sword through Macbeth's heart. The rebels were victorious. Macbeth was dead and his army defeated. The thanes declared Malcolm to be the King of Scotland. Grateful for their service, the new king declared that henceforth his thanes would bear the titles and rights of earls, as was the custom in England. "Sadly, Banquo is dead," said Malcolm, "so I will name his son an earl and keep him close to me. He will be like my son." And so, as the sun rose on a now peaceful Scotland, Banquo's son looked at the clear sky and said, "We'll have nice weather today, I think." The questions. Number 1. What was the prophecy? A. Banquo will be king. B. Macbeth will be king. C. Duncan will be king. D. Malcolm will be king. The answer is B. Macbeth will be king. Question 2. How did Macbeth become king? A. He inherited the throne. B. He started his own kingdom. C. He killed the old king. D. He opened a burger restaurant. The answer is C. He killed the old king. Question 3. What happened to Banquo? A. He died of natural causes. B. He died of unnatural causes. C. He became king. D. He ran away to England. The answer is B. He died of unnatural causes. Question 4. Who killed Macbeth? A. Ross. B. Banquo. C. Banquo's son. D. Macduff. The answer is D. Macduff.